poor girl's kindness to a struggling old man transforms lives in the town. Emma trudged through the icy streets of her small Midwestern town, her breath visible against the biting cold. As she passed the park, she noticed Mr. Thompson sitting alone on a bench, his appearance frayed and unkempt. Most people hurried past him, dismissing him as bitter and broken. Emma felt an urge to stop. Would anyone notice if she reached out, if she fed him a warm meal? Her mind raced. Her life was so hectic, with her mother struggling to pay the bills, and her job at the diner consuming all her free hours. Yet, something about Mr. Thompson's presence tugged at her heart. She hesitated for a moment. A whirlwind of emotions churned inside her. Was it worth risking her dignity for a man whom others avoided? But the thought of a loving face hidden beneath layers of neglect gnawed at her conscience. What if he'd been like her father, once filled with hope, but discarded by life? With resolve, she decided. She could offer him soup from the diner that night. It felt risky, but in that moment, it felt right. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That evening, as she prepared a steaming plate of soup, an anxious flutter filled her stomach. What if he rejected her? The town's judgment weighed heavily on her shoulders, and the prospect of ridicule haunted her. She stepped out into the cold again, willing herself not to turn back. Hand trembling, she approached the bench and offered the soup. Mr. Thompson looked up, his tired eyes reflecting surprise and something unrevealed. Emma anticipated scorn or ignorance. Instead, he accepted her offering with a quiet thank you. They sat in silence as he tasted the warm broth, memories dancing in his eyes. She soon found herself engrossed in his tales of love, loss, dreams deferred. Each story resonated deeper than her textbooks ever could. The revelations stirred something within her, igniting a determination to fight for that connection, bridging the gap between them and their townsfolk. But as their bond blossomed, so did Emma's fears. She could see the stares of disdain at school, the gossip swelling like a storm cloud over her. Could she truly pull off organizing a fundraiser to fix his dilapidated home? Would she encourage the town to see value in someone they'd dismissed? Her heart raced with anxiety at the thought. Being a nursing student was hard enough without the added pressure of standing against old prejudices. The following day, news of her plans felt like a wildfire spreading, both exhilarating and terrifying. The emotional weight of her actions threatened to consume her whole. Emma felt the ground shift beneath her feet, teetering between fear of rejection and a longing to make a difference. She lay awake that night, wrestling with self-doubt and determination. What if she faltered? What if the town turned its back on her? And then, amidst her turmoil, a shadow loomed over her small world. Her father's figure unexpectedly appeared at the fundraiser, a desperate look etched on his face. Emma stared, her breath caught in her throat. Everything she had been fighting for held still something monumental was about to break. The future felt uncertain, fragile now, and the room pulsed with a weight she couldn't escape. What did this twist mean for her dreams, her struggles, her relationship with Mr. Thompson, and the town that had always labeled her? Emma's heart raced as her father approached, the air thick with unspoken words and memories long buried. She had spent years resenting him for abandoning their family, and now, there he was, a figure overshadowed by regret and desperation. To Emma, he looked like a ghost from her past, haunting her at the most crucial moment of her nascent journey. She felt a tumult of emotions battling inside her, a mixture of anger and a longing for answers that would never come easily. Emma, he began, his voice cracking like aged wood. The familiarity of his tone sent a jolt through her, dragging her back to moments of laughter and warmth, moments that felt distant now. She fortified her resolve, reminding herself why she was here. It wasn't about him. It was about Mr. Thompson, about her plans for the community, about reclaiming her narrative. "Why are you here?" she asked, her tone curt, no room for softness. She could feel the room grow colder, the energy shifting. "I came to see you," he admitted, tension lacing his words. I know I haven't been part of your life, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. I heard about what you're trying to do for that man. The mention of Mr. Thompson felt like an anchor, grounding her amidst the rising storm. It was as if all her fears and aspirations had a name now, a focus. I'm trying to help Mr. Thompson, she stated firmly. He deserves more than what this town has given him, and I can't let anyone else's judgment keep me from doing the right thing. Her father looked conflicted, as if her conviction was a slap reminding him of his own failures. You know what the townsfolk are like. They want to understand, he warned, his brows nodding in concern. Maybe they don't understand because everyone is too afraid to show kindness, Emma shot back, surprising herself with the sharpness of her reply. I will make them see him. I will not let fear dictate my choices. With her voice steady, she turned away, determined to distance herself from the past he represented. The back and forth tugged at her emotionally, forcing her mind to whirl with thoughts of defending not just Mr. Thompson, but herself. She was carving out her identity in this pivotal moment, knitting courage and purpose from threads of compassion and resolve. Back at her home that night, Emma scrutinized the notes littered across her desk: ideas for her fundraiser, sketches for potential flyers, a list of supplies required to repair Mr. Thompson's house. With each line she wrote, she could feel the unease ebbing, replaced with a growing sense of self. Yet, a dark cloud loomed on her horizon, the memory of her father lingering like an unanswered question. What could she achieve if she fully embraced this new direction? Suddenly, doing something for Mr. Thompson transcended mere charity. It became an assertion of her will against the opinions that had shackled her for too long. Determined to not be associated with her father's decisions any longer, Emma resolved to reach out directly to the townsfolk, one by one, personally inviting them to join her cause. She couldn't count on the past to influence her choices. She had to be the architect of her own story. As she stepped out to navigate the bitter cold, she felt a new kind of warmth grow inside her, the flame of purpose ignited. The world opened up with possibilities, yet doubts nibbled at the edges of her confidence. Would the very people she sought to reach understand? Could they be swayed by her conviction? Just as those nagging thoughts began to cloud her mind, a faint figure approached her through the mist. Was it Mr. Thompson? Had he come looking for her? Or was it someone else ready to challenge her resolve? Emma tightened her grip on the flyer she held, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The moment was thick with suspense, either a turning point or yet another hurdle. It was time to see how far her determination could take her. The figure materialized from the shadows, and to Emma's relief, it was Mr. Thompson, his familiar silhouette framed against the dull glow of the street lamp. The sight of him ignited an unexpected sense of clarity, a reminder of her purpose amidst her father's emotional bombshell. As he drew closer, she could see the burden he carried etched into the lines of his weathered face. "Emma," he said, yet his voice resonated with a timbre that was both weary and wise. "I didn't mean to intrude. I just wanted to find you before the night got too cold." "I'm so glad you came," she replied, feeling a rush of determination surging through her. "I was just thinking about how to gather support for your repairs. Let us brainstorm ideas together." Mr. Thompson's tired eyes brightened momentarily, and the edges of his mouth lifted into a ghost of a smile. It was a minor victory, but to Emma, it felt monumental. They stood in the chilling night, two people united by a shared mission, and in that moment, Emma recognized the power of empathy. Over the next hour, they exchanged thoughts and plans, and Emma was amazed to discover Mr. Thompson's knowledge about carpentry and community history. She took careful notes, pleased with his encouragement. Each piece of advice he gave added substance to her resolve. As he spoke about his life, Emma began to glean insights not just about her own aspirations, but about the interwoven fabric of human experiences. "What you're doing is noble," he said as the conversation began to draw to a close. "But it won't be easy. People can be resistant to change, especially if they can't see the need for it." "I'm counting on that," Emma replied confidently. "They won't be able to ignore it once they see the potential for something better." Each word felt fortified by her exchange with him, emboldening her to confront her own fears. As they parted ways, Emma felt a surge of energy. She envisioned the townsfolk, half curious, half disbelieving, leaning into her vision instead of dismissing it outright. She had to challenge their assumptions and showcase the value that Mr. Thompson and by extension, her initiative brought to the community. Emboldened by her recent discussions, Emma spent the following days meticulously planning. She reached out to neighbors one by one, sharing her enthusiasm about Mr. Thompson's repairs and casting her vision upon them like seeds into rich soil. Her mantra became that each conversation opened a door, another chance to engage, persuade, and enlighten. However, with each door she edged open, she could feel the weight of their skepticism clashing with her passion. Some were supportive, but others hesitated, questioning her motives. Was it charity or an escape from her own demons? Critics began to emerge, and the subtle doubts that had hidden in the corners of her mind were now glaring and accusatory. Emma wrestled with these doubts on long, restless nights. She called upon her inner strength, reminding herself that she was not merely fighting for Mr. Thompson, but also for herself, asserting her newfound place in the world, shaking off the remnants of her father's choices. But would mere passion be enough to translate the townsfolk's doubts into action? On one particularly challenging afternoon, as she practiced a speech in front of her mirror, anxiety swelled within her. Would they listen? Or would they simply perpetuate the cycle of dismissal they had embraced for so long? Thoughts tumbled chaotically in her mind, juxtaposing confidence and vulnerability. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, cutting through her spirals of uncertainty. Emma opened the door to find several townspeople gathered on her porch, led by a familiar face, her father. They held a banner proclaiming their support for Mr. Thompson's repairs, but the questions in their eyes seemed to echo louder than the words they'd come to present. It was her moment to confront both the lingering shadows of her past and her vision for the future. The stage had been set, but would she prove herself in the face of skepticism, or would her father's ghosts begin to overshadow the very life she sought to build? The atmosphere thickened with unspoken tension as Emma stepped forward, not just to speak, but to show them the vision she harbored of hope, responsibility, and dignity. All eyes were on her, waiting for her next move. It was time to reveal her true convictions. Would they see her potential, or would the walls of doubt continue to rise? The atmosphere was charged with uncertainty as Emma stood before her father and the gathered townspeople. The banner fluttering in the crisp air seemed to whisper promises of collaboration, yet the scrutiny mirrored her internal conflict. She shoved her hands into her pockets, grounding herself, drawing on the self-confidence she had cultivated through her late-night deliberations and hopeful revisions. "I appreciate your support," she began, her voice steady despite the rapid thrum of her heart. "But this isn't just about repairs. It's about realizing our potential together." As the words spilled forth, she focused on cultivating a narrative that connected her past struggles to the town's potential. Here was a chance to transform skepticism into engagement. Yet, amid her fervent appeal, doubt pricked at her gut. Would they see through her bravado to the girl still wrestling with abandonment and regret? Emma's father stood there, an enigmatic figure whose presence tied her back to unhealed wounds. She felt the weight of his expectations pressing on her shoulders, holding her tethered to a past she longed to break from. Attuning her focus back to the task at hand, she gestured toward Mr. Thompson, who stood patiently at the edge of their circle. Mr. Thompson is not just a victim of neglect. He embodies wisdom, skilled labor, and a passion for our history. Together, we can bring that spirit of community to life. Emma glanced from face to face, searching for flickers of understanding or support rather than reproach. When a voice from the crowd, belonging to her next-door neighbor Mrs. Wilson, broke the silence, Emma felt a jolt of hope. "But how can we be sure it will actually work? We've heard such promises before, haven't we?" Emma took a breath, rallying her thoughts. "Mrs. Wilson, I get it. Trust is built not by words, but through action. I'm ready to lead this project, and together, we'll set a precedent that proves the value of caring for one another." It felt bold, perhaps reckless, but her determination surged, guided by a fire ignited during her late-night conversations with Mr. Thompson. "How much is it going to cost us?" Another voice chimed in, steadying the tension with financial skepticism. The question nagged at her like a stubborn itch. Emma paused, choosing her next words carefully. "It's not just about money. It's our investment in ourselves as a community. Mr. Thompson not only knows how to repair buildings, but also understands how to repair our relationships and morale. This is bigger than just bricks and mortar. The urgency in her tone seemed to capture the group's attention, but doubt still lingered in their expressions. She could almost hear their unsaid questions. What if she failed? What if her aspirations crumbling under the weight of reality shattered their already fragile trust in her? She had to confront the fear that wrapped around those thoughts. What if she did fail? Emma felt the stirrings of a revelation. Perhaps failure was merely another step toward growth, a chance to learn. If she could embrace her uncertainties, perhaps the townspeople could too. Imagining Mr. Thompson's words, she took a step forward. I am young, and yes, I have made mistakes. But my heart is in this, and I promise to be transparent with all of you. If you give me a chance to prove myself, I want just ask, I'll show up and work beside you. The moment hung suspended in the cool air, an invitation laced with urgency and fear. Would they lean into vulnerability, or would they retreat into skepticism? As the murmurs simmered around her, Emma felt a flicker of hope amidst her fear. In that charged silence, a hand emerged from the crowd, raised high her father's. He stepped forward, the resolved expression on his face both a challenge and an endorsement. Emma, let's hear your full plan. The collective breath of the crowd wrinkled the air, hope straining against doubt as they turned their focused attention back to her. Emma stood poised to seize this pivotal moment, ready to reveal her strategic vision, yet pulses of uncertainty still fluttered beneath her confidence. As she prepared to lay it all out, Emma realized she had to embrace the forthcoming vulnerability, both hers and theirs. This was not only about initiating a project, it was about healing. Would they see the potential for something palpable, tangible, or would they withdraw, sealing her fate back in doubt? With her heart pounding in her ears, Emma took another breath, ready to dive deeper into her vision of community, yet fully aware the actual work was just beginning. Would she emerge as the leader she aspired to be, or falter under the pressure of unrelenting expectations? The uncertainty lingered, a tight coil as she opened her mouth to speak once more. As Emma steadied herself, she felt the gravity of the moment weighing upon her. She had always been the one seeking approval, her father's doubts shaping her adolescent identity. But now, standing before the townspeople, the stakes were different. The past was a shadow she couldn't afford to keep reminding herself of. She had to refocus on the vision ahead. I want us to envision a space where tradition breathes new life, she began, consciously breathing through the nerves that danced in her stomach. Imagine the old community hall revitalized into a vibrant gathering place. Not just for events, but for us to connect. Imagine a garden the children can tend to, and structures that reflect our history and pride. Her thoughts raced as she mapped out her ideas, her words weaving an intricate tapestry of aspirations. Each mention of the community hall elicited a flicker of recognition among the crowd. She could see their skepticism beginning to thaw, the barriers she'd sensed earlier weakening. Yet, behind her determined facade, an uncomfortable thought flicked through her mind. What if she wasn't capable of executing this vision? She had little experience and a past riddled with missteps. But she quickly quashed that nagging doubt. This time, she wouldn't let insecurity dictate her ability. What we need is a framework, a plan that involves everyone, she insisted. I promise to gather input from all of you, not just during the planning stages, but throughout the journey. Your concerns and your voices will shape this project. We will meet regularly, and each contribution will count. Emma felt the need to establish an accountability structure, one that would combat the failures of the past, both personally and collectively. As she spoke, she caught glimpses of her father's expression, interest mingled with trepidation. This was new territory for both of them. She wanted him not just as a supportive figure, but as an active participant. Could he step outside the foothold of worry and help carry the vision into existence? The dynamics between them had always been fraught, but breaking free from old patterns was vital now. Let us set a date to brainstorm together, she asserted, flipping through her mental calendar. I can arrange a meeting next week. Think about what you want to see. I'll provide refreshments. Maybe we could even have it at the old hall to get inspired by its potential. At that moment, the subtle shift in the crowd's energy was palpable. Emma could feel it. Their curiosity peaked, their resolve building. Their earlier skepticism was now a faint echo as her enthusiasm anchored in their consciousness. A beacon of possibility. That a hand rose again, this time from Mr. Thompson. Emma, he drawled, contemplating her words carefully. You've got the spirit, and I like the ideas, but dreams without a plan are just that, dreams. He was right. A roadmap was essential. Emma nodded in acknowledgement. Exactly, Mr. Thompson. And that's where your experience comes into play. I'll be relying heavily on your expertise. She punctuated her statement with a smile, hoping to harness his knowledge and temper his skepticism. Now the conversation transitioned, the townspeople leaning into the dialogue, their doubts retreating as they began to exchange ideas about materials and resources. Yet, even in this budding optimism, Emma felt the haunting echo of her deepest fears. Each suggestion was a reminder that they were all expecting her to succeed, to lead in ways she had yet to prove she could. It was exhilarating and terrifying as the meeting drifted toward its conclusion. Thoughts of potential outcomes raced through Emma's mind. This was merely the first step toward fulfilling the vision. Would she be able to sustain this momentum? Could she balance aspirations with her vulnerabilities? Somewhere in that blend of anticipation and pressure lay the essence of her growth. She had thrown herself into the unknown, confronting previous insecurities, and she sensed that the battles ahead would shape her character and resilience. Thank you all for the trust you're starting to show, she said, warmth radiating from her. Let us channel that into actionable solutions for our future together. I'm ready, and I hope you all will join me. As the crowd began to disperse, she could feel the weight of possibilities swimming around them. Yet underneath that exhilaration, a familiar fear simmered, reminding her that expectations could also lead to regret. Would the next meeting solidify their growing camaraderie and trust, or would small fissures begin to form under the pressures of reality? Emma wondered what awaited her in this new territory of leadership that loomed ahead, and as she left, the lingering questions echoed in her mind. Would she rise to the challenge, or falter as she once had? The following week arrived too quickly for Emma's taste. She had spent every waking hour preparing for the meeting, sketching out plans and crafting lists. The weight of responsibility pressed on her as she stood in front of a half-empty room at the community hall, the worn wood flooring creaking under her feet. Yet, there was a flicker of excitement buried beneath the apprehension. She had the chance to instill real change, but could she actually pull it off? The afternoon sun streamed through the old windows, casting light on the remnants of past gatherings. As the townspeople trickled in, the sight of their curious faces momentarily eased her nerves, igniting a small flame of determination. This was a space ripe for transformation, and despite the whisper of doubt in her mind, Emma was resolved to convey that vision. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice steadying as she glanced around the room. I hope you've had time to think about the ideas we began last week. Today, we're here to turn those ideas into a real plan. She maintained her gaze level on the crowd, trying to catch the eyes of the doubters before her, those who had unknowingly mirrored her own insecurities. Thompson, seated toward the back, folded his arms. His skepticism seemed to wrap around him like a curtain. Emma pulled her focus from him, channeling her thoughts into actionable discussion points. First, let us break down the vision into achievable steps. I've created 3 main areas we can address: funding, design, and community involvement. She motioned to a large poster board where she had listed potential resources to tap into. We can brainstorm local businesses for sponsorship and donations. I know some of you have connections that could help us gather support. The conversation erupted into a mix of excitement and confusion, comments bouncing around the room with fervor. Emma listened intently, absorbing ideas and suggestions, each new contribution knitting the fabric of their collective aspiration tighter. But with each passing moment, a gnawing fear crept back. Was she capable of maintaining this momentum? When Emma first raised the need for community involvement, someone suggested creating a committee. The moment sparked something deeper within her, a moment of clarity. Those committee members would be entrusted with a share of the responsibility. Her instincts whispered that delegating tasks would fortify their commitment. And what if we form small committees? Emma proposed, her heart pounding as she continued. Each group could focus on a different aspect. One for fundraising, one for design brainstorming, and one for outreach to encourage local participation. A glimmer of consensus formed in the room, voices buzzing as ideas intertwined. But doubt stung her again. Was forming a committee simply shifting her fear of failure onto others? However, a fresh resolve kindled within her as she thought of her father, sitting silently, but listening intently. He had always been the practical voice in her life, and deep down, she longed for his blessing. What if she made him a part of this journey, involving him in a way that would foster their relationship? "Dad, I would love for you to lead the committee focused on the design," she suggested, her voice trembling just slightly. "You have so much experience, and I believe it would mean a lot to everyone if they knew you were guiding the aesthetics of our vision." The turn of her proposal surprised him. She could see the wheels turning in his head. After a pause, he swallowed hard, the weight of her gaze making his expression soften. "I suppose I could do that," he murmured, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his stoic demeanor. As the meeting wound down, she felt buoyed by their contributions, yet her insidious worry was still there, a whisper in the back of her mind. What if her father's participation shifted the dynamics she desperately wanted to build? Emma's excitement clashed with the uncertainty of forging her path while still tethered to the past. The stakes were higher now. She could either rise to challenge her insecurities or slip back into familiar patterns. Walking out of the hall, she set her jaw with newfound resolve, determined to own her narrative. But as she stepped into the fading light of the day, one thought gnawed at her: what if the expectations she had fostered spiraled into something untenable? The moment of codependency clashed with her desire for independence. Would she summon the strength to navigate these intricacies, or would she risk losing herself in the roles she needed to play? The air around her was thick with tension as she turned to face the town square. Beyond the challenges of the meetings and the hard work ahead lay an even deeper inflection point, one that she needed to confront soon. Would she ultimately step forward and seize control of her future, or would she hesitate at the crucial moment yet again? Emma had scarcely slept that night, her mind replaying the events of the meeting like a disturbing loop of uncertain outcomes. The following morning, she stared at the rays of sunlight straining through her kitchen window, the warmth doing little to ease her anxiety. Sipping her lukewarm coffee, she sketched out a detailed plan for the committees she had proposed. As the paper filled with words and visuals, her heart raced. This wasn't just about ideas anymore. The moment demanded action, and she was teetering on the edge. Fighting against the magnetic pull of doubt, Emma made a decision at that table. She would not allow her father or anyone to define what this project meant to her. But the very thought of confidently launching into this made her stomach tighten with unease. She felt unqualified, a mere amateur in a sea of expectations, including her OWNAS. She organized her notes into a coherent strategy. Emma's thoughts drifted back to the moment she involved her father. He hadn't shed his typical hesitance completely, but this was territory she was willing to explore. His nod of agreement lingered in her mind. It was a tiny victory, yet it felt like the stepping stone she needed to build upon. Taking a deep breath, she picked up the phone and called her first committee member, Tina, a young entrepreneur who previously opened a small cafe in town. It surprised her how a simple conversation thawed some of her anxieties. Tina was immediately enthusiastic, brimming with fresh ideas for the fundraising group. Together they mapped out potential events and local businesses to approach, and Emma could sense she was beginning to weave a support system brick by brick. She was building a foundation. By the end of the week, fueled by small victories, Emma felt a quiet confidence growing. The morning sun of Saturday projected a vibrant energy on the community's annual market, where she'd set up a booth to discuss the project with locals. Amidst the stalls of handcrafts and homemade foods, Emma felt a ripple of empowerment surge through her. She stood tall behind her display, unwavering as townspeople milled around. Emma found herself greeted not only by familiar faces, but also newcomers who were intrigued by her mission. Their curiosity forced her to articulate the vision she had spun from her earlier fear, and as she presented her ideas, surprise flooded her. A spark ignited within their conversations, and Emma found her narrative gaining strength and clarity. Anticipation hung thick in the air when Mr. Thompson approached her booth, his arms still crossed, but curiosity shining through his guarded demeanor. "I must admit, Emma, I didn't think you'd actually follow through," he said, his tone half-joking yet carrying an air of seriousness. "I'm determined to make this happen," she replied firmly, a fire ignited within her. "I'm inviting you to be part of these discussions. Your voice matters." For a moment, The skepticism in his gaze softened, revealing a glimpse of the community spirit she was striving to cultivate. Who could have thought that Mr. Thompson would be one of the first to lend an ear? Although apprehension flickered through her, Emma couldn't deny that here was an opportunity not just to prove herself, but to shape dialogue that transcended her own visions. As the crowd thickened, Emma fielded questions and absorbed perspectives. Each interaction became a lesson in balance, her desire for independence tempered by the realization that she needed the involvement of others to truly bring her dreams to fruition. Later, she recounted her experiences to her father, who had been lingering nearby. There was a depth of pride in his eyes, offering her an unexpected boost of reassurance. It stirred a strange mix of emotions in Emma, prompting a deeper reflection on her need to shine, while simultaneously weaving a safety net with those around her. But even as promise developed amid community ties, Emma sensed an impending chasm slowly forming. Her ambitions clashed against unfulfilled expectations, the balance precarious. Could she maintain her momentum without veering into a dependency? That question lurked like a shadow as the market wrapped up, leaving her hesitant, standing at the edge of possibility. Something unnameable surged within her, an urge to carve her path without neglecting the connections she was forging. For the first time, she understood the nuances of leadership, how it involved not just commanding but also yielding, how vulnerability could become a strength. Yet, the battle within was unyielding, a constant oscillation between ambition and the fear of allowing others to shape her narrative. In that moment, the underlying truth began to seep in. She was not only cultivating change outside, but also reevaluating the very core of who she was. As dusk settled over the market, Emma noticed an elderly man sitting on a nearby bench, seeming lost in thought. The weight of his solitude echoed what she feared: desolation can linger in community spaces still. She felt an inexplicable pull toward him, a need to bridge the gap between their worlds. Would this encounter become the catalyst she needed, revealing something vital she had yet to discover about herself? Emma's gaze remained fixed on the elderly man, the lines of time etched deeply into the wrinkles of his face. The way he sat, burdened by a palpable sense of isolation, sparked an unsettling connection within her. Was he merely a reflection of her own fears? The thought gripped her insides as she instinctively moved toward him. "Hello there," she said, her voice tentative, like the first crack of dawn breaking the night. The man looked up, eyes clouded yet still awake with curiosity. "Hi," he replied, a hint of uncertainty threading through his voice. Emma gestured to the booth behind her. "I'm Emma, and I'm working on a community project. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it." She had purposefully steered the conversation toward him rather than volunteer an explanation. His brow furrowed, not out of disbelief, but perhaps from a history of being overlooked. "I don't know if I can help with that." The resignation was palpable, yet something within Emma ignited at that very moment. This man, this stranger, could offer insights that her careful, curated discussions may not capture. "Everyone has something to contribute," she countered softly, her own voice steadying her resolve. "What is your name?" "Henry," he whispered, and for a fleeting moment, a flicker of hope darted across his weathered face, as if someone had finally acknowledged his existence. The connection blossomed, if only just a bit, and Emma felt a shift, a deeper understanding forming within her as they conversed. Emma realized how layered Henry's struggles were, a lifetime of experiences pooled into simple anecdotes of resilience. He spoke of earlier days filled with community bustling, while sharing tales of laughter that had long since faded with time. Each story chipped away at the wall of doubt that had threatened to crowd her spirit, revealing the strength she had within herself. "Remarkable, isn't it? How change creeps in slowly," he said, reflecting on the town's evolution over the years. Emma felt a ring of truth in his words, resonating deeply with her own journey. Change, indeed, was never as loud as it seemed. It seeped in, one moment, one connection at a time. Their dialogue meandered, but Emma felt something more significant at play, a rush of determination intertwined with her vulnerability. This was no longer solely about her initial vision. It was part of a larger tapestry that needed weaving, a blend of voices and stories, including Henry's. Emma suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to act on this epiphany. "Henry, Do you know how good it would feel for you to share your stories at our next meeting? For a moment, he remained silent, his gaze fixed on the space between them. Emma's heart thrummed in her chest, anxiety creeping in as she awaited his response. What if he said no? What if the self-doubt she recognized mirrored his own? With a deep breath, he nodded slowly, a quiet resolve beginning to form. Maybe I could do that. Relief washed over Emma, but it soon twisted into determination. She had drawn him out of his silence. The magic of connection had begun. As she left him, she felt the fleeting winds of change swirl around her, carrying Henry's quiet promise into the atmosphere. The potential of their collaboration ignited a new purpose within Emma. Her ambition expanded, entangling itself with an authentic desire to capture voices previously unacknowledged. But sinkingly deep beneath that flame, doubt still lurked, whispering, was she capable of wielding this responsibility? By the time she left the market behind, light fading into a comforting twilight, her mind raced with questions. A kaleidoscope of ideas spun around her like fireflies. What would it mean to rely on others, just as she forged her path? Could she balance her voice with the authenticity of those she invited in? Emma found herself back in her kitchen that night, coffee long since gone cold. As she papered her walls with plans and notes from her conversations, something tangibly shifted within her. The weight of reliance transformed into a lifeline. She was not lost, but interlinked with her community's tapestry. Yet, the chorus of doubt remained. Could she truly navigate this uncharted territory of shared leadership successfully? The clock ticked into the late hours, and her stomach churned under the weight of a burgeoning realization. She had set the stage, but the performance was just beginning. With that thought echoing in the silence of her thoughts, Emma stared at her notes one last time. As it all started to coalesce, her resolve solidified. She touched her pen again. A fresh plan was forming, one that would bridge her ambitions with the very heart of the community that pulsed around her. But as the ink dried on her strategic ideas, she realized she was standing on the brink of something immense. The question lingered like a shadow. Could she summon the courage to confront the deep-rooted fears that warned her against this collaboration? More importantly, would unraveling the threads of her own ambitions lead her toward empowerment or chaos? The weight of the moment clung to her, each heartbeat pulling her closer to the edge of confronting those fears as she decided her next steps. Emma understood now. The call to action was not solely external. It rippled through her very core. The sun's first rays filtered through the kitchen window, illuminating the chaos of Emma's notes. She had barely slept, and the fatigue pressed heavily on her eyelids. Yet, the thrill of inspiration surged within her. The colliding thoughts of yesterday's encounter with Henry breathed a sense of urgency into her plans. Emma realized that confronting her doubts was now more than a personal endeavor. It had become a necessity for growth, both for herself and for Henry. Sipping from a new cup of coffee, Emma scanned her kitchen table, now a temporary war room for her ambitions. Each note represented pieces of conversations, interspersed with scrawls of ideas skittering across the pages like scattered leaves in the wind. Henry's stories had awakened something inside her, a catalyst for her own yearning to be heard. And with every word he shared, those senses of strong advocacy took root deeper, demanding action. But just as quickly as conviction stirred in her chest, insecurities crawled back into her mind, casting a lingering haze. What if the community dismissed her initiative? What if they were uninterested in welcoming a figure like Henry, someone perceived as an outsider? She felt the weight of expectation pressing on her shoulders, the expectation not only to succeed, but to validate the voices she aimed to uplift. In harrowing clarity, she saw the stakes escalate over her morning coffee. Determination sparked inside her, but so did fear. How would she navigate this precarious landscape? Emma had always been a guiding light in her previous projects, but this was different. It called for vulnerability, for collaboration, and maybe even for stepping aside when the time came to let others shine. The reality hit. Her strength would be measured by her ability to listen and adapt. Fueled by necessity, she opened her laptop and began crafting an email to potential participants in her planned gathering. She detailed her vision, emphasizing the importance of sharing lived experiences, careful to frame Henry's importance within that narrative. As she typed, her fingers became swifter, mirroring the pounding of her heart. With every word, She faced the confession of her doubts. Was she truly a facilitator or merely a roadblock in their quest for authenticity? Then came the moment that threw her off balance. She hesitated. Could she be a catalyst for change while also remaining in the background? The realization that she may desire the spotlight more than she'd like to admit left her feeling exposed. To be vulnerable, to step aside from the podium she had often occupied, it terrified her. Emma closed her laptop and sat back, letting the deepening self-awareness wash over her. This moment of reflection stilled the chaos inside her mind, even if only briefly. Navigating through her personal apprehensions of inadequacy was part of this journey, akin to the daring step Henry took in agreeing to share his stories. The subsequent hours blurred into a haze of meticulous planning interspersed with introspective pauses. She toyed with methods to draw out narratives from others, blending interactive exercises with open dialogues. The more she strategized, the clearer her mission crystallized. This wasn't her vision anymore. She had to champion the stories that had lain dormant for too long. But in the midst of her creation, a chilling realization haunted her mind. What if Henry faltered when he stood in front of the crowd? Would she be able to gracefully catch him if he stumbled? This thought toppled her confidence like a glass rod underfoot. Emma's fingertips drummed anxiously against the table. She couldn't let those shadows of doubt dominate her resolve. The stakes were too high, not only for her ambitious dreams, but for the lives intertwined in this endeavor. And if she intended to confront her fears, perhaps it was now time to also extend that invitation to Henry. Returning to her laptop, she drafted a new segment to her email, this time focusing on how integral Henry's participation was to the whole narrative she hoped to create. Would they support him as she had? Emma paused in contemplation. What could go wrong if they witnessed firsthand the power of a living story? As she took a deep breath, pressing send, Emma's resolve deepened. Each step she took was one that brought her closer to understanding herself, and the courage to let others share their truths had to be part of her journey. The shadows of doubt still loomed, but were now dimmed by growing determination. Emma couldn't ignore them for long, and the prospect of failure loomed close. She had ignited a spark with Henry, but doubts curled at the edges of her ambitious plans, as unsolved puzzles remained. Would she unearth the strength needed to support not just her growth, but Henry's emergence as well? The clock ticked ominously in the background, a reminder of having less time than she thought to if on cue. The phone rang. It was Henry, his voice gravelly yet unwavering. In those first few words, the impact of their journey together began to manifest. The weight of anticipation settled heavily in Emma's chest. This next encounter would either unveil raw truths or risk pulling apart her carefully woven threads. Emma stood on the precipice of change, her experiences intertwined with the townspeople who had slowly transformed in response to her unyielding vision. The week that followed her meeting at the community hall had been tumultuous, yet transformative. 10 days of discussions, fervent planning, and casting aside doubts felt like a trial by fire. Yet she emerged unscathed. United with a community ignited by purpose, as she prepared for Henry's inaugural storytelling session, the pivotal moment to showcase the bonds forged through empathy. Something profound surged within Emma. Once uncertain, she had fully claimed her role as a facilitator, not just of stories, but of profound connection and growth. Days spent rallying support had crystallized something monumental. Skepticism had metamorphosed into understanding, igniting a spark of collective ambition. Standing before a modest assembly of townsfolk in the beloved community hall, the air thrumming with anticipation, Emma recognized the familiar weight of expectation. She had spent countless nights illustrating her vision of interwoven lives, dreams, and legacies. The time had come to unveil the blueprint she had meticulously crafted, not merely for her, but for everyone who had taken this journey with her. Each individual present held a thread in this narrative, each contributing to the tapestry she had envisioned. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice steady and commandingly warm. "Tonight, we are here not just to hear from Henry, to discover how his life has unfolded, but to gather strength and perspective for ourselves. Each of us carries stories worth telling, and it is through these stories we will build something remarkable together." The anxiety that throbbed beneath her confidence was palpable, Yet Emma felt fortified by the small victories she had achieved along the way, the supportive voices that had risen during her planning, the enthusiastic participation she'd received from people she once feared would scoff. In facing these moments collectively, she recognized that she was no longer just a girl chased by uncertainties. She was a leader, equipped with the knowledge that she had the capacity to cultivate change. As Henry took the floor, she felt a palpable shift. There stood the man who had once felt discarded among them, now brimming with vigor and life. Emma observed as he drew from his past the essence of resilience mixed with heart. His stories sparked laughter, empathy, and a renewed sense of belonging within the crowd. The barriers of indifference melted away as he recounted tales of forgotten memories interlaced with wisdom, inviting each listener to reflect on their own experiences, their own motivations that brought them here tonight. Emma contributed gently through encouragement, glancing at the enraptured faces of the audience, gauging their reactions, feeling their unity cement like bonding mortar and bricks. This was a moment not solely to celebrate Henry's transformative presence, but to acknowledge how storytelling weaves us into the larger fabric of our community. The event unfolded seamlessly, each participant adding their voice under Emma's guidance. As she saw the impact of Henry's words resonate, her heart swelled with affirmation. She was witnessing the power of stories reviving connection. She had surpassed her previous constraints. Each supportive interaction was a stroke further blending the colors of her ambition with the essence of her community-human connection. When the evening drew to a close, Emma stood captivated by the newfound relationships that had blossomed before her. She felt the shifting dynamics in the room. The air was thick with hope and solidarity. Unscripted applause enveloped Henry as he finished each clap, a symbol of the validation he had not only sought for himself, but had sparked in others through his vulnerability. Emma reflected on the profound strength forged from openness, and she understood this was her evolution. That night marked an essential juncture. Emma had not only empowered individuals to embrace their narratives, but had also reconnected with her father, who had engaged alongside the townspeople in ways she had never anticipated. Their tentative relationship, once fractured by emotional scars, began to mend under the light of genuine conversations cultivated by the project. Their collaborative efforts, the shared glances of recognition, crafted a palpable bond she thought could perhaps never return. Emma returned home later, the warmth of accomplishment enveloping her like a comforting cloak. Her kitchen, now filled with an aura of excitement, felt the reverberations of the night's triumph. She had navigated a complex tapestry of connections, her spirits soaring in the wake of collective affirmation. At that moment, Emma invited herself to bask in her achievements. All the risks she had taken had birthed a venue of hope, community, and partnership. No longer defined by her father's past or the judgments of others, Emma stood as a beacon, a testament to overcoming personal struggles while pulling others toward their own turning points. She felt grounded in confidence, her voice steady against doubt, impervious to it. Now that in that quiet refuge, she penned a heartfelt letter of gratitude to Henry, thanking him for stepping into his own light and allowing her to champion his narrative. Emma had evolved beyond her fears. She could now celebrate the power of shared vulnerability as a pivotal force in realizing dreams. Driven by unrelenting resolve, she had conquered not just the complexities of leadership, but the intricacies of connection, marking a consistent journey of growth for herself and her community. The vision she had instilled strong, alive, and ignited within every corner would continue to flourish, as each engaged individual placed their stake in a shared future fueled by resilience and compassion. And at that moment, Emma resolved she would never again shy from the challenge of wielding her voice purposefully. The world had opened before her, its rich tapestry of stories yet to unfold, and she was more than ready to weave the next chapter of transformation with every person willing to join her. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it seriously makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Be a part of this journey.